Hello and welcome to Teach to Learn, the channel in which I teach concepts so you can learn them and I can better understand them. Right now we're going to be learning how to use the rest parameter with function parameters in JavaScript. So let's dive right in. In order to help us create more flexible functions, ES6 introduces the rest parameter for function parameters. With the rest parameter, you can create functions that take a variable number of arguments. These arguments are stored in an array that can be accessed later from inside the function. This is very important. So what the rest parameter does is that when you create your functions, you can make it so that your function takes in a variable number of arguments that haven't been declared beforehand. Also, these arguments are stored in an array that can be accessed later from inside the function. And then we're provided with an example of a function being declared with the function keyword and being called how many. And our parameter uses the rest parameter syntax, which is simply an ellipsis, the 3 dots right here, and our argument's name. So our parameter with an ellipsis, these 3 dots right here. And then within our function, we have our block of code that sets our function to return the concatenation of a string of you have passed. Then concatenated to that is our arguments, our args or args length, and then finally concatenated a string value of arguments. Then our function is simply logged into the console once, firstly with arguments 0, 1, and 2 being passed into it. And in the second instance of our function being logged into the console, we have that it has been passed to it the arguments of string, null, an array with number values 1, 2, and 3, and an empty object. So then they say the console would display the strings you've passed 3 arguments, and you have passed 4 arguments respectively. 3 for this one, and 4 for our second one. The rest parameter eliminates the need to check the args array and allows us to apply the map, filter, and reduce methods of arrays on the parameters arrays. I will be explaining the map and filter methods of arrays in future lessons, and for this video I'll be explaining what the reduce method is doing since it is being applied in our challenge. So then we move on to our challenge, which is to modify the function sum using the rest parameter in such a way that the function sum is able to take any number of arguments and return their sum. So first, before we do anything to this function, let's explain what it is currently doing. So we have a variable sum being declared with the const keyword and being assigned a function that is using arrow function syntax. We have that our function takes in arguments for parameters x, y, and z. So our function currently takes in 3 arguments. Then within our function, we have a block of code that declares variable args or arguments with the const keyword and assigns it an array that contains the same exact arguments that we pass into our function. So if we passed a number for x, y, and z, let's say we pass numbers 1 for x, 2 for z, and 2 for y, and 3 for z, then our array would contain the same exact values that we passed into our function. So our array would contain values 1 for x, 2 for y, and 3 for z. And then within our block of code, our function is also set to return our arguments variable with the reduce method of arrays. And let's explain that real quick. So the reduce method of arrays takes in a callback function. What exactly is a callback function? A callback function is simply a function that is passed into another function. So we have our reduce method, and then within it, we have a callback function, which is what it what it will be doing for us. So since a callback function is a function that is passed into another function, it takes in arguments. And the reduce method of arrays takes in 2 arguments, which are, in this case, A and B. Where I'm going to be changing them so that you guys can get a better understanding of what is going on. So our argument A is our accumulator, and our argument B is our current value. And then our reduce method is set to return the sum of our accumulator and our current value. Our current value. Note, the reduce method takes in 2 arguments. This is our first, which is our callback function. And this second one right here simply represents what we are setting our accumulator's initial value to. So since we are looking for a sum of values x, y, and z, we want the initial value of our accumulator to be set to 0. So in order to further explain this, let's log into the console our sum function with arguments of 1, 2, and 3. And as you can see right here, we get a sum of 6. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6. What is going on with our reduce method is that our accumulator starts off at 0. And then we passed in values of 1, 2, and 3 into our sum function, which then set those values in our array. And what our reduce method is doing, it is taking our current value of our array. So it starts from the left, the first value. It is taking 1, which is the first value of our array, adding that into our accumulator, then moving on to our second value in our array at position 1, which is 2, and adding that once again to our accumulator, and finally moving on to our third value at position 2 within our array, and adding that to the values saved in our accumulator. So we get our sum of 6. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6. That is my explanation for the reduce method of arrays, because it is used in our challenge. And now let's move on to what the challenge tells us to do. So we need to modify the function sum using the rest parameter in such a way that the function sum is able to take any number of arguments and return their sum. Okay, so remember this right here. These arguments are stored in an array that can be accessed later from inside the function. So we can go ahead and get rid of this array declaration right here, because our values passed into our function will be automatically saved within our array that we can access later. So let's delete this. And using the rest parameter, we simply use our ellipsis, our 3 dots, so 1, 2, 3, and add in our args argument. And as you can see, we also get a value of 6. So we have successfully used the rest parameter within our function. Our rest parameter allowed us to pass in 3 values into our function without explicitly stating that we were about to pass 3 values into it. So this challenge is now done. And thank you so much for watching. This has been your bearded coding friend, teachToLearn. If this video helped you out, please consider subscribing, leaving a like. It really helps me out a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.